Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Cami is off tonight. We begin with a first alert update. The mother of a 2-year-old who authorities say died of a fentanyl overdose last month makes her first court appearance this afternoon. Allegheny County authorities arrested 28-year-old Brooke Seal earlier this week. She faces one charge of neglecting a child causing death. Her cash bond now set at $500,000. Brittany Schmidt joins us now in our newsroom with the latest from court. Brittany.
Bill, we received a copy of the criminal complaint against Seal, along with an investigator say 2-year-old Rosalie Garcia had enough fentanyl in her system to kill a grown adult. The Allegheny County Sheriff's Office has been investigating the child's death for weeks. They initially responded to an apartment in Freedom on January 6th for a report of a toddler not breathing just after 9:30 in the morning. Garcia later died at a local hospital. Now authorities say her mother is responsible. In the complaint, authorities found evidence in her apartment that made it, quote, clear the defendant exposed the child to fentanyl in her bedroom and in other places in her apartment, end quote. Several tests of objects in the home tested positive for fentanyl. Investigators say they have printouts of text conversations between Seal and a man who lived in her home, Fahim Jones, actively seeking to buy fentanyl within 9 hours of the death of her child.
Miss Seal has been or was in contact with another male resident she allowed to live at the residence who also had fentanyl, that there were communications between them regarding accessing and purchasing or getting some fentanyl. There was also an additional search warrant conducted this week where some additional drugs were located in her residence as well.
The defense pointing out Seal does not have a criminal record in Wisconsin. She faces up to 25 years in prison if convicted. She'll be back in court mid-February. Bill.